Welcome to video lesson 9.7, and we're going to look at factoring by sum or difference of cubes. Go ahead and put today's date in the top right hand corner. And our can statement is I can factor the sum or difference of cubes. Now, sum or difference means we're allowed to add or subtract. So sum or difference of cubes is for two terms. And both terms are perfect cubes. That means we're going to have the power of 3. Now, saying sum or difference of cubes takes a long time to say, so I just say sum of cubes, which is SOC, and difference of cubes is DOC, so I call it sock and dock. So, sock and dock is for perfect cubes, and I made us our perfect cube list like how we did our perfect squares. So here's our perfect cube list. 1 cubed is 1, 2 cubed is 8, 3 cubed is 27, 4 cubed is 64, 5 cubed is 125, 6 cubed is 216, 7 cubed is 343, 8 cubed is 512, 9 cubed is 729, and 10 cubed is 1,000. And just like how the opposite of a square is a square root, the opposite of a cube is a cube root. And cube roots look like this right here. It has a 3, and then your radical bar. Try that radical bar again. There we go. So that's what a cube root looks like. So the opposite of a cube is a cube root. Now our steps. Oh, there we go. Step 1 is always to check for GCF. Step 2 is to check two terms and make sure that they are perfect cubes. Step 3 is to make your first parentheses. So sock and dock is one of those I like to make my answer as I go. So make the first parenthesis and take the cube root of both terms. Step 4, we're going to go ahead and make our second parenthesis and follow the next steps, and we ignore the signs. We're just going to pretend that we don't see them for our second parenthesis. So we're going to square our first term and put it square the first term in the first parenthesis, and that's our first and our second parenthesis. Then we're going to change our sign. So if it's a plus, we're going to make it a minus. If it's a minus, we're going to make it a plus. Multiply the terms of the first parenthesis together. We're going to make the next sign always a plus sign. And then we're going to square the last. And that's the last term in first parenthesis. Alright, then in step 5, we just write out our answer. And our answer for this one looks a little bit different because we have the cube root of our first term and then plus or minus the cube root of our second term. And then for our step 4, we square the first term, we change our sign, we multiply our first and last terms together. It's always a plus sign, and we square our last. And for sock and dock, following through these steps is about the easiest thing we can do. So we'll keep our steps handy as we do our first example. So let's see our first example. We'll do this number so we can still see our steps. So example 1, we have 8y to the third plus 27. Try to make this a little bit bigger for us. So 8y cubed plus 27. So step 1 says check for GCF. So we see 8. We say, can 8 go into 27 evenly? No. And our factors of 8 would be 4. So 4 can't go into 27, and 2. 2 can't go into 27. They don't have any variables in common, so no GCF. So step 2, make sure they're perfect cubes. So I have an 8. 8's on our perfect cube list. We have a 27. 27's on our perfect cube list, so we're good. So now, step 3 says make first parenthesis and take cube root of both terms. I'm going to skip a line give yourself some room to write the next one. So skip a space and then make your first parenthesis. Take the cube root of 8y cubed. So cube root of 8, if you look over here, is 2. And then the cube root of y cubed is just y because cubes cancel. Now I'm going to drop down my plus sign and say the cube root of 27. So over here on your cube root list, it's 3. So 2y plus 3. We have our first parenthesis. Now on that same line where we skipped some space, I'm going to make my second parenthesis. We have to make it big enough for 3 terms. It's going to be a trinomial. So now we're going to follow these steps right here at step 4. So we're going to square the first term in first parenthesis. So right here, I have my first term is a 2y, so I'm going to say 2y, and the whole thing squared. So this takes us back to our monomial notes. I have to say 2 squared is 4, and y squared is going to be y squared. Alright, then our next one is we change the sign. So if it's a plus sign here, in my next parenthesis, I'm going to change it to a minus. Now for our second term, we're going to multiply the terms of the first parenthesis together. So I get 2y times 3. That's going to give me 6y. And it says always a plus, so then it's a plus sign. Then we're going to square the last in the first parenthesis. So my last term, my first parenthesis is 3. So we're going to square 3. And 3 squared is 9. And that's our answer for our sock and dock. Just go through there and make sure you multiply, make sure you just follow those steps. And when you multiply right here, just make sure you multiply the terms without their sign. So it's just 2y times 3y. And even though it has a minus sign in front of it, we know we had to change our sign, because that's what our steps told us to do. So just go through there for sock and dock. Just do those steps. Now if you want to check it, you just distribute. You do 2y times everybody in the second parenthesis, then you do 3 times everybody in the second parenthesis. And it'll come out being our problem, 8y cubed plus 27. So let's see another example. We have 64w cubed minus 343y cubed. So we're going to follow through those steps. Step 1, check. Make sure we don't have a GCF. So 64 cannot go into 343 evenly. And go ahead and tell us the factors of 64 won't go into 343 evenly. So then we're going to go on, say 64 is on your perfect cube list. It breaks apart into 4. 343 is on your perfect cube list. It's 7. And then w's being cubed, y's being cubed, so we're a sock and dock. Everybody's a cube. So I'm going to skip a line and make my first parenthesis. We take the cube root of our first term, so 64w cubed. So the cube root of 64, we already said it was 4. Cube and cube cancels, leaving it with just 4w. And we drop down our minus symbol. And then we say the cube root of 343y cubed. So cube root of 343 is 7. And cube cancels, and we just get 7y. So now for our second parenthesis, we're going to follow through those steps. So step 1 is to square the first. So my first term over here is 4w. So 4w squared. So 4 squared is 16. W squared is w squared. Change the sign. So if it's a minus over here in the first parenthesis, it's now going to be a plus. Then for our next one, we multiply together. So 4w times 7y. Remember, we ignore the signs. We say 4w times 7y. So 4 times 7 is 28, and we put our variables in alphabetical order. So w, y, and it's always a plus sign. Then we square the last. So 7y squared. So 7 squared is 49, and y squared is y squared. And that's our answer. So our step 1 is to always check for GCF, and we try 3. 3 can go into 24 evenly, and if you look, they both have x's. We need x to the first because he's smallest power. So we divide everybody by our GCF of 3x, and our 3x goes on the outside. And we divide. 3 divided by 3 is 1. We don't have to show it. And then our exponents we subtract, so 4 minus 1 gives us x to the third. Minus 24 divided by 3 is 8. X divided by x cancels. So now we look in here. X cubed minus 8 has 2 terms. X is a cube, 8 is a perfect cube. So inside here becomes our sock and dock. And actually it's a dock because it's a minus, it's a difference. So I'm going to skip a line and drop down my GCF, 3x, make my first parenthesis. So we take the cube root of everybody in the parenthesis. So the cube root of x cubed cancels and just leaves us with x. And we drop down our minus. Cube root of 8 is 2. Now we make our second parenthesis and follow our steps. So square the first, so x squared is just going to be x squared. Change our sign, so if it's a minus, it's going to be a plus. Multiply together, so x times 2 gives us 2x. It's always a plus sign. Then we square the last, so 2 squared is 4. And that's our answer. And guys, real quick, just don't forget to drop down your GCF in front. Make sure you got 3x there in front to show that was our GCF. And we're good. That finishes up for sock and dock.